For your entire life, you've probably felt it. A quiet, persistent sense of being different. Not in a way you could easily explain. It wasn't about your interests or your hobbies. It was deeper. You see patterns others miss. You feel emotions that others ignore. You ask questions that others find uncomfortable. Society has a word for people like you. Too sensitive, too intense, too complicated. You've been told to calm down, to fit in, to be less you. You learned to hide it, to dim your own light. You started to believe that these traits were your flaws, your burdens, your curse. Today, we are going to tell you the truth. A truth so profound it might shatter the very foundation of who you think you are. Those are not your flaws. They are your upgrades. You are not broken. You are a breakthrough. The great depth psychologist Carl Jung spent his life studying the rarest forms of human consciousness. He discovered that less than 5% of the population develops what he called differentiated consciousness. These are not just different personalities. They are, he believed, humanity's next evolutionary step. This is not about being special. It's about being responsible. This video is a mirror. If you recognize yourself in the signs we are about to describe, everything will finally make sense. This is not a passive viewing experience. It is a roll call for the few. Before we proceed, go to the comments. I want you to write the one word you were most often called as a child that made you feel different. Was it sensitive, serious, dreamer? Let's see the medals we were taught to see as scars. The roll call has begun. Now let's deconstruct the architecture of your rarity, and let's understand the warning that comes with it. Jung didn't create a simple checklist. He identified a cluster of interconnected traits that signal an advanced psychological structure. We call these the 7 seals of the Sentinel Archetype. If you recognize yourself in even half of these, your life is about to change. The first seal is an emotional depth that feels almost supernatural. You don't just feel emotions. Emotions move through you like symphonies. Each one carries layers of meaning that others can't access. When you feel deeply, you are not overreacting. You are accessing what Jung called the objective psyche. You are feeling the unspoken tension in rooms before anyone says a word. You are carrying the emotional undercurrents of every interaction. Your psyche is wired for depth, not for surface-level pleasantries. Most therapists miss this. They call it emotional instability. Jung called it emotional sophistication. This is not a weakness. It is a form of intelligence. The second seal is a sacred curiosity. Most people, Jung said, live unconscious lives. They accept social programming without examination. But you can't help but dig deeper. You don't just ask, what? You ask, why? Why do people stay in relationships that diminish them? Why do we accept systems that don't serve human flourishing? While others accept the status quo, you are already envisioning what could be different, what could be more authentic. Your questions threaten others' comfortable illusions. They challenge the psychological defenses that keep people feeling safe in their limitations. This is why you've been told you think too much. What they are really saying is, your thinking makes me uncomfortable. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Carl Jung. The third seal is a conscious independence. You have learned not by choice, but by psychological necessity to stand alone. Most people's sense of self is a fragile construction, built on the opinions of others. But you have learned through painful experience that depending on others for your sense of worth is psychological quicksand. So you built yourself from the ground up. You created an identity that could not be taken away by someone else's approval or absence. Your solitude is not loneliness, it is a sanctuary. It is where you remember who you are beneath all the roles and expectations. This is the beginning of what Jung called individuation, the psychological journey toward becoming whole. The fourth seal is hyperperceptive awareness. You don't just observe people. You read their psychological signatures. You notice the micro-expressions, the energy shifts, the words they don't say. When someone says, "I'm fine," their entire energetic field screams distress, and you can't unsee it. When there's tension in a room that everyone else ignores, you feel it in your bones. This is not paranoia. This is your intuition functioning at an advanced level. But Jung warned, if you don't learn to protect this sensitivity, it will exhaust you. You become an unconscious therapist for everyone around you, carrying pain that isn't yours to carry. The fifth seal is a craving for meaning over everything else. You are psychologically incapable of living an inauthentic life. You've probably tried. You've tried living for external validation, following scripts, playing expected roles. But you felt that knowing emptiness, that quiet desperation beneath any applause. Your psyche literally rebels against a life that lacks substance. You can't pretend that shallow goals matter. You can't build relationships based on convenience rather than connection. When you refuse to settle for less than authentic connection, you become what Jung would call an evolutionary catalyst. You force others to confront their own inauthenticity. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. The sixth seal is that you have outgrown people and environments repeatedly. This is often a solitary and painful journey. You've experienced the realization that people who once knew you don't anymore. Not because you've become difficult, but because you've shed layers of conditioning that no longer serve you. Jung called this process psychological death and rebirth. The friends who knew you when you were shrinking, when you were people-pleasing, they remember that version of you. Sometimes they want that version back, but you can't go back. Jung understood that psychological evolution is irreversible. Once you've seen behind the curtain of social conditioning, you can't return to unconscious conformity. The seventh and final seal is that you sense a purpose that can't be defined yet, a persistent feeling that you are meant for something more than the ordinary. Jung would have recognized this as the transcendent function, your psyche's drive toward individuation and purpose. It is a restless knowing that you have something to contribute, something to build, something to express. Jung's most profound insight here is that your calling isn't just personal, it is transpersonal. You are not just here to fulfill yourself. You are here to serve the evolution of consciousness itself. So you see the signs. You are not just different. You are rare. You are, as Jung believed, essential for humanity's future. But now comes the warning, the part of the journey most people with these gifts never complete. You must integrate your shadow, or your gifts will become your prison. Even rare personalities have unconscious aspects that can sabotage their growth. Jung identified several shadow patterns common to psychologically advanced individuals. Recognizing them is the first step to disarming them. The first shadow, the superiority complex. You begin to see your rarity as evidence that you are better than others, rather than simply different. This is a subtle poison. It leads to arrogance, judgment, and ultimately, profound isolation. You cut yourself off from the very humanity you are meant to serve. The true sentinel is wise enough to know when to lead and when to follow, when to speak and when to remain silent. The second shadow, the messianic complex. You become convinced that it is your job to wake up or heal everyone around you. You start preaching instead of listening. This is not service. It is ego. It leads to burnout and a deep resentment when others don't appreciate your unsolicited efforts. You forget that you cannot walk someone else's path for them. The third shadow, the martyrdom complex. You start to believe that being rare means you must suffer. That depth demands giving up joy or closeness. Without knowing it, you choose people and situations that keep this story alive. You become attached to your own struggle, forgetting that the aim is not to die for awareness, but to share it. Jung saw that facing these shadows is key for mental health. The task is not to erase them, but to see them clearly so they don't run your life in secret. This calls for new skills and a more conscious way of living. Jung's last lesson about rare personalities was both hard and freeing. You must learn to value your rarity without needing others to see it. The point is not to prove how special you are. The point is to live your gift so fully that you show what's possible when someone is true to themselves. Some will never understand your depth. Some may feel threatened by your questions. Others may try to dim your light because it reminds them of their own shadows. But Jung noticed something striking. When you accept your uniqueness, you draw in people who are ready to accept theirs. You don't need everyone. You need the few who can meet you at your level. The world needs your questions, your sensitivity, and your refusal to treat limits as final. But you must share these gifts with care. Be strong but also guarded, open yet selective. That balance lets your gift last. So remember this, you are not too much. The world is too little. And Jung knew that people like you are the ones who change that. Your sensitivity isn't a weakness to be managed. It's intelligence to be applied. Your intensity isn't too much. It's exactly what certain situations require. Your refusal to settle isn't difficult. It's necessary for the evolution of consciousness. Every time you felt like an outsider, you were actually scouting new territory for human potential. You are not just living your life. You are expanding what it means to be human. If even half of these signs resonated with you, you're not just different. You are part of what Jung believed was humanity's next evolutionary step. You are one of the people pushing our species toward greater awareness, deeper truth, and more authentic connection. If you are ready to fully embrace your psychological rarity and stop apologizing for the traits that make you extraordinary, then make your declaration. Go to the comments and write, "I am evolutionary consciousness." It is a declaration of your responsibility, a commitment to your purpose. Subscribe to the Thinker's Codex. The world needs you to be exactly who you are.